Not far from where you're sitting right now, there exists a country called Kalia. It's a beautiful place, well worth visiting if you have the time. The capital is an ancient city named Lago Puera, and sailors and visitors usually enter through its port. They're greeted by the sight of the palace domes, sparkling in the sun, painted like the Kalian Sea, whose waves foam silver, whose depths shade the eye with unending blues. The shore shimmers gold, the land opens like an emerald quilt, and the Kalian mountains rise up as giants to greet the sky. You'd think that for the princesses in the story, who were born in Kalia, who grew up in that palace, who were destined to survey the waters of the Kalian Sea, this would be a happy place to live. In fact, it was the opposite. There were 12 of them, and the eldest was called Frida. Frida was very clever, and she had many ambitions, but most persistent was a desire to fly a plane. Then came Paulina, and she could read the stars. Next was Lorna, the kindest and thus the wisest of them all. After her was Ariosta, a talented painter, who cut off all her hair without permission when she was 10. She had the same style 10 years on. It still suited her. Chesa came next, a girl who sang to break your heart in 20 pieces, then put back together with a jazzy aria. Then came Belina, who taught herself 5 languages. Vita was the 7th daughter, a happy spirit whose love was like a tonic. She was the luckiest and the quickest at jokes. Mariella came next, and she loved to do sums, numbers dancing in her mind like obedient bears. Then there was Delilah, who had such green fingers that even the stubbornest plant grew at a touch. Next was Flora, always reading a book, a newspaper, or the side of a biscuit box. After her came Amelia, who wanted to be a vet. And the youngest was Agnes, the most watchful of the sisters. She was going to be a writer when she grew up. And their parents? Well, this was the problem, as parents often are.
Long ago, Ramsay's boots were filled with the icy water, and the howling winds drove sheets of stinging spray across his face as he struggled to keep his grip on the helm. He was fairly certain the next wave was either going to capsize them or completely splinter their ship to matchwood. This, he thought to his satisfaction, is what being a pirate is all about. Wrenching the ship's wheel with an effort that made his aching arms scream in protest, Ramsay leaned forward to bellow an order to his crew below. He might as well have been whispering, for the storm snatched at his commands and carried them away. No matter, each of the crew was an experienced sailor, and the last few days sailing through what felt like a literal hell had taught them to anticipate each other's actions. For now, they would work without words. Ramsay squinted through the darkness and the rain to make out the Rathbone and the Mercia moving in tandem. They had lashed ropes to the railings and tied them securely around their waists as they wrestled with the sails, desperately seeking the ever-shifting balance that would keep the ship darting between the waves without the sails being torn to shreds. Behind them, a flash of lightning illuminated Shan as he stacked up to the prow. He held the battered bucket in his hands and began emptying its contents overboard, bailing away rainwater that had trickled down into the lower decks. Those 3 pirates, along with Ramsay, represented the entire complement of the Magpie's wing, the tiny ship he had commissioned especially for this voyage. His friends and rivals had scoffed at the idea of setting sail with such a tiny crew, least of all into the Devil's Shroud. But that was precisely why they'd failed, where Ramsay had succeeded. The Devil's Shroud. Every pirate grew to know its name, even if they preyed upon waters 100 miles or more from that cursed region. Ramsay had never been a superstitious man, but he didn't have to believe in undersea gods or arcane rituals to experience the fog's effects for yourself. I learned swiftly that it was a very real threat indeed. The shroud ebbed and flowed across a vast region of the sea, writhing like a living thing. Unwary ships could easily be drawn into its fringes, even if they sailed that route without incident for years. Any vessel that did slip its course and find itself in those strange, ethereal clouds would soon realize it. Its crew would begin to taste an odd tang upon the air. Not quite sour, and not quite rotten, but cloying on the tongue and in the back of the throat. It was like trying to take a deep gulp of black treacle. Ramsay mused, but the treacle that soon began to burn cold like a hand held too long in ice. Masks, scarves across the face would do nothing to help. Before long, once able seamen would be coughing and spluttering, choking on the very air around them. Often they'd be so overcome they wouldn't realize their ship was dying too. Whatever fell cursed region inflicted upon people foolish enough to enter it would also work his will upon wood and the metal. Beams would begin to split and twist, buckling and warping the planks and made up the ship's hull. The nails that held them in place would start to rust away to fine red powder. The beleaguered crew would be fighting a losing battle against an onslaught of leaks and breaches as murky water poured in below decks. New ruptures, appearing faster than the old ones, could be bunged or repaired. Yes, any seafarer with a promising career and a decent life expectancy soon learned not to sneer at the existence or the threat of the Devil's Shroud. Though the challenge just made each ambitious pirate all the more determined to see what was on the other side.
How did this happen to you? A playmate's mother asked nervously one day as she looked around our flat. It had come out wrong, but I didn't hold that against her. My life had come out wrong too. That we left a huge family home on the Los Angeles hillside and now live in a small top-floor flat in deep North London had not exactly been the plan. So many of us think our life is going to go one way, and it ends up going somewhere completely different. In exchange for being able to live near my family, I signed over my half of our magical mansion on the water. The house of your dreams is something you're meant to work towards, not walk away from. It felt unbearable to leave the mural of Australian animals I'd painted on the bedroom wall, the front and back garden, the curved lines of the balconies that made it feel you were looking at the mountain lights reflected onto the water from the bow of a ship in motion. It felt unbearable, but it wasn't, because here we are. I fled London 20 years ago because, 1, there was an Oasis video whose plot twist I couldn't understand, so I thought I should really just leave the UK, and 2, not being a drinker had become too oppressive in social situations. My teen years were spent saying, "No, I don't have a drinking problem, I just don't like it." In a downboat drunk elephant bubble of music journalists and bands, it couldn't work.
Lost letters have only one hope for survival. If they are caught between two worlds, with an unclear destination and no address of sender, the lucky ones are redirected to the Dead Letters Depot in East London for a final chance of redemption. Inside the damp rising walls of a converted tea factory, letter detectives spend their days solving mysteries. missing postcodes, illegible handwriting, rain-smudged ink, lost address labels, torn packages, forgotten street names. They are all culprits in the occurrence of missed birthdays, unknown test results, bruised hearts, unaccepted invitations, silenced confessions, unpaid bills, and unanswered prayers. Instead of longed-for missives, disappointment floods post boxes from Land's End to Dunnet Head. Hope fades a little more every day when doorbells don't chime and doormats don't thud. William Wolfe had worked as a letter detective for 11 years. He was one of Army of 30, having inherited his position from his beloved uncle Archie. Almost every Friday throughout William's childhood, Archie, clad in a lime green leather jacket, rode his yellow Honda Dream 305 over for tea, eager to share fish and chips doused in salt and vinegar served with a garlic dip, and tales of the treasures rescued that day. Listening to Archie opened William's mind to the myriad of extraordinary stories that were unfolding every day in the lives of ordinary people. In a blue-lined copybook, he wrote his favorites and unwittingly began what would become a lifelong obsession with storytelling, domestic mysteries, and the secrets strange as nurse. What surprised William most when he started working there himself was how little Archie had exaggerated. People sent the strangest paraphernalia through the post, incomprehensible and indefensible, sentimental and valuable, erotic and bizarre, alive and expired. In fact, it was the dead animals that so frequently found their way to his inner sanctum of the postal system that inspired the Death Letters Depot's name. A photo taken in 1937, the year it had opened, showed the original postmaster, Mr. Frank Oliphant, holding a pheasant and hare aloft, with 3 rabbits stretched on table before him. By the time William joined in 1979, it was much more irregular occurrence, of course, but the name still endured. He still felt Archie's presence amid the exposed red brick walls of the depot, and some of the older detectives sometimes called Williams by his uncle's name. Their physical similarities were striking. Muddy brown curls, chestnut beards flecked with rust, the almond-shaped hazel eyes that flicked between shades of emerald green and cocoa, the bump in the nose of all Wolfe men.
Lost letters have only one hope for survival. If they're caught between 2 worlds, with unclear destination and no address of sender, the lucky ones are redirected to the Death Letter Depot in East London for a final chance of redemption. Inside the damp rising walls of a converted tea factory, letter detectives spend their day solving mysteries. Missing postcards, illegible handwriting, rain-smudged ink, lost address labels, torn packages, forgotten street names. They're all culprits in the occurrence of missed birthdays, unknown test results, bruised hearts, unaccepted invitations, silenced confessions, unpaid bills, and unanswered prayers. Instead of the longed-for missives, disappointment floods post boxes from Land's End to Dunnet Head. Hope fades a little more every day when doorbells don't chime and doormats don't thud. William Wolfe had worked as letter detective for 11 years. He was one of the Army of 30, having inherited his position from his beloved uncle Archie. Almost every Friday throughout William's childhood, Archie, clad in lime green leather jacket, rode his yellow Honda Dream 305 over for tea, eager to share fish and chips doused in salt vinegar, served with garlic dip, and tales of treasure rescued that day.
Not long after my 42nd birthday, my ex-husband puts his arm through mine and tells me about a 21-year-old Brazilian girl he's planning to make his girlfriend. The divorce had finally come through, and I was in LA bringing our daughter, CJ, to visit him from London, where she and I now lived. Things had become friendly enough to catch a movie together, just the 2 of us. Walking the graffiti East Side pavements before the film starts, He explains his plan to clear the deck of other girls, as he had once cleared the decks for me. Paula is young. He says too young. He shakes his head. He wishes she wasn't 21. Having started my writing career as a columnist on a national newspaper when I was a teenager, I feel protective of the very young. Ben feels protective of me, both as I was then and as a result of what I was then, since he too, via the medium of Australian coming-of-age films, was out in the world too early. He also knows what it is to have a minor spritz of fame that isn't worth the cost once the top note of success are burned away. He knows the waiting until middle-age to have people pick up on your scent again. We are both old enough to remember Fleetwood Mac's rumours on vinyl, visceral memories of turning over to the B-side where Revelation lives, and young enough that the vinyl was handed out from our mothers. We both have early childhood memories of ABBA, though they're different. He's a recurring dream of discovering his parents, who were in the midst of a bitter divorce, happily in bed with the full band members. A suspicion garnered from their videos that the cheerful bearded men were holding the stricken-looking women against their will. We arrive at the visitor cinema to find the manager, having lovingly maintained the theatre's 1920s Egyptian revival columns, ceiling and murals, has dressed up thematically, as he often does on opening weekend. We hide it off for CJ and Ben's joy birthday 3 years in a row, Finding Nemo, then Singing in the Rain, then Kubo and the Two Strings. We packed the aisles with the friends and family, who were first worrying about the state of our marriage, then looking uncomfortable at how close the event fell to our divorce filing, then the next year marvelling at how well we seemed to get on. We were so determined not to divorce the way his parents had. Some have suggested our friendliness is the reason I fail to countenance dating. It's hard to convince people. I just want to be alone with myself, who I genuinely thought I might never get to see again. So, my ex-husband and I walk arm in arm to see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which is a very long film. In the aisle, he's approached by someone he's worked with, then by a fan, each time introducing me, "This is my beautiful ex-wife." We take out seats in the middle of the row, and at first, he is delighted by Tarantino's fake trailers. Then, a while into the movie, his leg starts shaking. Then, 40 minutes before the end, he hisses, "Fuck's sake!" then stands up and barks at the screen. "Get on with it, Quentin!" And pushing past toward the knees and handbags in our row, past the fan who had approached him, he walks out. I watched him bolt up the dimly lit aisle, as I had watched him turn cars around, take off his wedding ring in a fight, call time, again and again, as I would see him clutch his face and wail, "No more tricks," when he opened the cupboard and found Marmite when he'd expected Vegemite.
Hope fades a little more every day when doorbells don't chime and doormats don't thud. William Wolfe had worked as a letter detective for 11 years. He was one of an army of 30, having inherited his position from his beloved Uncle Archie. Almost every Friday throughout William's childhood, Archie, clad in a lime green leather jacket, rode his yellow Honda Dream 305 over for tea, eager to share fish and chips doused in salt and vinegar served with a garlic dip. and tales of the treasures rescued that day. Listening to Archie opened William's mind to the myriad of extraordinary stories that were unfolding every day in the lives of ordinary people. In the blue-lined copybook, he wrote his favorites and unwittingly began what would become a lifelong obsession with storytelling, domestic mysteries, and the secrets strangers nurse